All right, welcome back, everyone, to today's Explainer. Now, if you're sitting in on this advanced undergraduate biology lecture, chances are you've spent years, literally years, memorizing metabolic pathways, ATP cycles, and the basic thermodynamics of life. But today we are going to fundamentally disrupt your standard model of biological energy. We're going to look at why energy, in its raw, unfiltered form, is completely useless to a living system unless it arrives with a rhythm.
Here's a quick look at our syllabus for today. We're covering the myth of raw energy, photomorphocetus, the biotemporal closure principle, the RAF ladder, human rhythms, and finishing up with the co-emergence of time. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. The myth of raw energy. Rethinking biological fuel.
So, think back to your intro bio classes. You were probably taught the old paradigm, right? Light energy equals growth. Calories equal fuel. It's simple. But here is the massive elephant in the room. A random, unpatterned blast of energy does not grow a biological system. It just heats it, damages it, or excites the tissue. The real equation is so much more sophisticated. It tells us that patterned light, combined with the organism's internal clock, its cellular memory, and its specific receptor state, is what actually creates biological form. Energy has to be patterned in structure and time to actually instruct the tissue.
Moving to Section 2, Photomorphogenesis, Reading the Light.
To really prove this paradigm shift, we just need to look at photomorphogenesis, because organisms don't just eat light, they read it. Plants use highly specific receptors to read the structural parameters of light to get environmental context, not just bulk fuel. Take phototropins. They respond to blue light so the plant can bend and open stomata, meaning it's actually reading the direction of the light. Then you have phytochromes responding to red and far red light to regulate germination, which means they're reading the spectrum context. And photoperiodism? That proves plants are measuring the coincidence of light signals against an internal clock to figure out the length of day and night.
To successfully undergo morphogenesis, the organism is essentially forced to ask these implicit, critical questions about its environment constantly just to survive. Is it morning or is it night? Does this specific red to far red ratio mean I'm stuck in the shade of a taller canopy, or am I out in the open sun?
Is the blue light coming from the left or the right? And crucially, this is the big one, has this signal repeated enough to justify the massive energetic cost of triggering a developmental switch? To answer these questions, the energy has to be comparable across moments. And as advanced students, you know that comparing signals across time requires us to look at mathematical recurrence.
Section 3. The biotemporal closure principle. Formalizing rhythm.
Okay, let's look at how this builds into a rigorous theoretical framework. The absolute crucial point here is that energy only becomes meaningful when it repeats. We express this with a recurrence equation, where the similarity of an energy signal over a specific time period, or tau, has to hit a certain threshold. If that recurrence is high enough, life can actually entrain to it. Suddenly, it stops being random background noise and becomes a reliable, usable signal.
And that brings us to the core thesis of our session today, the biotemporal closure principle. It states that form emerges when patterned energy recurrently updates a biological closure that has the capacity to remember that pattern. Put simply, energy becomes time when it repeats. Time becomes memory when it persists in the cells. And memory becomes form when it guides future biological development.
We formalize this whole thing with the equation for delta C sub k, which represents the change in coherent biological form. Notice that available energy is just one single variable here. For a system to gain coherence, repair, and growth, that raw energy has to be multiplied by rhythmic repeatability, the receiving memory of the system, and its sensitivity, all minus the friction or frustration in the system. And hey, as undergrads during midterms, I know you guys are intimately familiar with biological frustration, but seriously, this equation proves coherent life energy requires quantity, spectrum, timing, rhythm, and receptive memory all working in total sync.
Section 4. The RAF ladder, from physics to form.
Let's break down the exact sequence of how raw physics turns into biological identity. We call this the RAF ladder, and it brilliantly illustrates the necessary biological progression. First, you have raw energy. That energy has to have a regular oscillation, which creates a detectable rhythm. The biological system then undergoes entrainment to that rhythm, which builds cellular memory. And only then, only after all those steps, can morphogenesis occur. Without this exact sequence, you don't have usable instructions for the organism. You just have chaotic fluctuation.
I want you to think about it this way. The sun does not merely feed a tree.
It provides a predictable, patterned field. The tree actually uses that repeatable external rhythm to organize its own internal rhythm. It is not just metabolizing photons to make sugar, it is physically phase-locking to the sun to build memory, timing, and structural form.
Section 5. Human Rhythms and Coherence, the Mammalian Application.
Now, as biology students, you need to realize this isn't just about plants. This fundamental biophysical principle applies directly to you, to human health and coherence. Humans consume food calories, right? That's our bulk energy. But just like the tree reading the light, our biology needs rhythmic permission to use those bulk calories correctly. And this permission spans across so many domains: our light and dark rhythms, sleep and wake cycles, breath rhythms, meal timing, temperature fluctuations, movement, and this is a huge one for stress, the predictability and safety of our social rhythms.
Look at what happens to those calories based strictly on your rhythm state. When your environmental and behavioral rhythms are stable, your biological frustration goes down. Your body uses the energy for repair, learning, growth, immune regulation, and maintaining a coherent identity. But when your rhythm is chaotic, frustration shoots up. The exact same caloric energy cannot be properly processed, so it just becomes noise, defense, chronic inflammation, anxiety, or maladaptive fat storage.
Section 6. The Co-Emergence of Time, a Grand Synthesis.
Let's elevate this to the level of theoretical biophysics for a second. If you take away anything from today's explainer, it should be a total rethinking of these two foundational concepts. Energy is not just stuff that does work, and time is not just a background river flowing constantly on a clock on the wall. Time is the ordering of change, and energy is the capacity and pattern of that change. They are inextricably linked. No structured update means no measurable time and no usable energy.
It really boils down to this: time and energy co-emerge. They aren't the exact same thing, but they are completely directly coupled. They co-define one another as paired emergent aspects of relational dynamics. You simply cannot have biological time without patterned energy to register it.
This single principle is honestly the grand synthesis of biological science. It is exactly why everything from photomorphogenesis and circadian biology to feeling a physical wound, consolidating a memory, learning a new skill, or even dropping into a deep psychological flow state depends entirely on patterned energy unfolding through repeatable timing.
Here is the ultimate takeaway of the biotemporal closure principle. Energy gives change its power, and time gives change its order. Without energy, there is no change. Without ordered change, there is absolutely no time.
I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to challenge how you view your own biology, and honestly, to question the structure of the environments you inhabit every single day. If your biology literally constructs its internal sense of time and form out of environmental rhythm, what happens to your cells when you live in a chronically chaotic, unpatterned modern world? Think about that before your next meal, or maybe before you stare at a blue screen at midnight tonight. Thanks for joining this explainer, everyone. Keep questioning the paradigms.